All right, this one's for women, right? So, I know this Ayesha Curry mess has got everybody in a tizzy. And I definitely don't want to speak to people's marriages because it can look like a number of different things. But I do want to speak to what has everybody in this frenzy of attacking Ayesha Curry's point or coming to the aid of Ayesha Curry's point. And I just want to break it down and give you the reasons why I think it's happening. So, for the women in particular, this is just how I see it, and I do believe most guys are going to see it. Because for Ayesha, everybody looks at her life and says, oh, she's married to Steph Curry. This guy's one of the greatest people on the planet. This dude's also 6'3". Also, looks like something out of one of those Sports Illustrated magazines. Every woman on planet Earth, right, would be dying to be with Steph Curry. This is also not a Future or a Nick Cannon where you're like, oh, okay, well, they're just going around and sleeping with all these women anyway, so who truly cares? And this is a good dude, somebody who we see as a good dude from our perspective because he's never really been caught in any sort of scandal and, caught with any women, caught doing any sort of weird, shady stuff. The only thing that we know is he seems to be a family man. He's the greatest shooter of all time, and he's at the peak, right, making hundreds of millions of dollars. So this is what we see. And a lot of women that came to Ayesha Curry's aid was sort of like, oh, why does it matter? Like men can't stand that the women want something separate from them, right? She got married early and she just didn't know what she was getting herself into. So however many kids later and however many years of marriage later, she's just, trying to put it out there that, she wanted to be this career woman or whatever. And a lot of that is fueled by the fact that a lot of times people look at situations and they're empathizing because maybe they've been in that position. And so what the women can't see is that the men also have a different perspective. So while the women are going, oh, like we want to be our own people, we want to be part of our own thing, we want to have our own identity, and understanding that when you get married, right, you become one. So it does make sense that your identity would be tied to the person that you became one with. But it doesn't negate the fact that maybe you weren't brought up in the correct way to see, and by the correct way, I mean you weren't brought up to be a wife. You didn't want to be that, maybe. But if you understood that you were getting with someone who wanted that life and who was on their way to doing things, there's two parts, right? You should have left that person alone because nobody wants to take somebody and then you see them going up and it's like, oh, like this is awesome. I get to be with a basketball player. I get to be with, a master electrician. I get to be with whoever. And, like I'm just living the life. And then I build this life and I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't really want this originally. And so, but being selfish, I said, man, like I'm going to stay in this because I could, see this person climbing. So that is bad, right? And that's what men see from the purview, from the different perspective. Like, why didn't you just leave him alone if you wanted to go out and be a career woman or do whatever? You can also see that, okay, you can build, with your man, have a family, and then whilst your family starting to grow, because really, people really push this too hard, but in the formative years, the first 5 years, I think it is super important to be able to be with your mom at home while she raises you, and you don't have to deal with the pressures of other people raising your children. But the older they get, the less and less time that you have to be there. So you can still have a career, right? 5 years after you're done having whatever presumably is your last kid. And you still have life to live. So that's an odd one, right? And so, but that's what men are seeing. They're saying, just leave him alone. He could have had an actual woman who was raised to be this housewife type, raised to be this mother type, and then you won't have somebody regretting the decision. On the woman's side, they're saying, oh, like they got in too early, over their head, which I will grant it's a little bit of an emotional argument, but you can empathize with the fact that if you're continuing to grow and you're getting better, you would naturally change. However, it doesn't mean that you have to change everything, because what they're doing is they're one, and then they're trying to say, oh, I want to form my own identity, right? So I want to break apart from my husband. It's no longer about him and our family, right? I want this to be about me, which is a very dangerous mindset to have. So far we've got it covered. Women, you should leave men alone if you want to go pursue your dream and you think at the time that this is going to have some negative consequence or some negative effect at the end. But we know people don't oftentimes work like that. They're like, oh, there's the best deal. I don't care if I ruin his life, right? Because later on, I'm going to think different, or they try to trick themselves into thinking that it's going to change. Now, there's another part to this, right? Men, if you have somebody who's saying, oh, like, I don't really like you that much, leave. Not, oh, I'm going to grow, this person's going to grow on me. We'll fall in love. We'll have kids once I can feel it, or once I, hope to feel it, whether that be because the person's making more money, because the person's stable, any of that. Men, you have to know that if they don't like you from the get-go, they just feel like, oh, like this is a good deal at the time, right? They will trade you just like any car. Right? It's like, man, this car was good when I got it, but it's depreciating, right? I feel like I can go get a better deal, right? So I can go get a newer car, one that's going to drive for a lot longer, one that's going to look good. And so they're always looking for something different. And so in Steph Curry's, he's at the peak, right? So she might not necessarily be looking for a different guy, which is what most women would do, but she is trying to separate herself from. And so if you don't have any sort of soul tie, you don't have any thing that just holds you together, and over time you're just building and building, you got to get out of there. I know it's going to hurt like heck, especially because men tend to love way deeper than women do, because it's always in women's best interest to protect themselves and preserve themselves. And it's just biological, right? So I don't fault any of you for making that choice. But as a man, you have to see that this person doesn't like me, this person's not attracted to me. Like off the rip, you have to get out of there because they're going to leave you when they find a better deal. And now, getting to the heart of this. These are the things that you can do in order to hopefully find your partner. Obviously, it's not going to be foolproof all the time, but these are things that you're going to be able to do to mitigate. So this is from the woman's perspective. Okay, how do I have to make myself into that type of wife? And then as a man, how can I identify what this looks like? So the first thing, right, is you have to find a partner early. I believe that when you find somebody early, because you almost have to be a little dumb for love, right? You almost have to be a little stupid because it's the only way that you're going to work through, right? So if me and my wife, split, got divorced, I wouldn't know what to do because I wouldn't be willing to go back into the pool and have to deal with, oh man, are these people liking me for me, or are these people liking me for different reasons? Do they like me at all? And they would just in every red flag I would see would just be too much. So, but when you build from the ground up, it's man, this person was with me when I had nothing and continue to work. And early on, you got to be a little stupid because you're just man, I love this person. So I'm going to go through it. But then you realize, right, 15, 20 years later, when you're still going through it, the key when you have disagreements is not to just go, okay, I'm out of here. Right? It's to work through it. And because you've built such a stamina to be able to work through those things, it just sort of comes naturally. So early and often is probably going to be the best way. Now, then you want to think about sacrifice. Now, sacrifice for men is what we do. That's just it. We sacrifice for the people around us. When we get money, we say, hey, how can I take care of a family? I just, I want to be able to give my wife what she needs. I want to be able to give my kids what they need. And I want to be present so that I can raise up a productive human being. And so sacrifice is just in the man's nature. Now, we understand that women do not have a duty of sacrifice, right? They have a duty to protect and preserve themselves. And so that's why usually, and I'm not talking about all women, right? Because there are women that sacrifice themselves for their family and, they stick it out. They raise beautiful families. They stay with their husband and they stick it out for the long haul. But we do understand more and more that's far and few between. So understanding sacrifice is going to be your next step in order to figure out, okay, this is not just about me. This is about the family that I've created and the family that me and my husband are building. This is super important because men are always sacrificing and women do not see it because they don't think of going to work and, working till your hands are bleeding as sacrifice. They just see it as doing what you're supposed to be doing. And especially if you're exceptional, if you're going to work, working, in the hot sun, or even in offices, you're working long hours, you're dealing with stress, they don't actually see that. And so all they see is, man, he comes home and he might be a little bit tired, do something. And without the woman's sacrifice at home and to take care of the things when the father, can't cover it, there is no unity in that, because the man's always going to be angry because he's not feeling appreciated, and the woman is going to be angry because she thinks the man's not loving her in the proper way, because he might not have as much time with the kids, or he might not have as much time for dates or whatever it is. And they're trying to convince you that, oh, it should only be about their wants and needs, when as a man we see our duties as working ourselves to death to make sure our family's okay. Like, our whole duty is sacrifice. And they're like, hey, I know you're doing that and you're working yourself to death. That's cool and all, but we still need you here. And part of that is for sure, right? Part of that finding balance and everything. It's like, okay, but if you're not following your purpose, like, they're not going to care about you anyway. So follow your purpose, right? God's purpose for your life. And then she follows you, right? It's supposed to be a sacrifice on both ends, right? Because I'm sacrificing my need to want to go chase women, my need to want to spend money on what I want to spend it on, because I know that I have a family to take care of. And in theory, right, what guys see it as is, hey, I'm sacrificing here, I would really like for you to sacrifice here with our family, just because we know we're trying to raise up, the next generation. And a lot of women may do that for a little while, may do that until the kids are older, but then they're like, yo, this was all for naught, because they don't see the beauty in what they've created. They just see a partner that, maybe left them hanging. But sacrifice is about doing everything and not expecting anything in return. And that type of love, that type of duty and responsibility seems to only lie with the men. And certain women, right? Because there's a lot of women biblically that God talks about and that truly walked with the Lord and were righteous and virtuous and all that, right? The next thing I want to touch on is being grateful, right? Being grateful is everything, right? So for men, I should say, right? So being grateful for men is everything. We do not care that we're going to work until our nose bleed. We don't care that we're going to work until we get a heart attack. We don't care about any of that, right? We care about taking care of our families. That is one of the biggest things. When you look at your husband and he's about his business, he's about his purpose, he's taking care of everything. We don't care about that. We love to do it because we love our families. We genuinely do. And when we're doing all of these things and from our perspective, women, so just pay attention to that. From our perspective, we're saying, hey, we're willing to work ourselves to death so that you guys can have the life that you want, speaking about women and children. And the only thing that we ask is to be appreciated. We don't care about any of that other stuff. It's like cool sex and love and cuddle and vacation, whatever. Of course, we want to be able to do those things, but the respect is everything. The appreciation, the gratefulness is everything. If you literally just focused on nothing else and you were just grateful for everything that, your husband was doing in order to provide for you, in order to try to give you the things that you need, because not everybody's going to have careers that produce a lot of money, or not everybody's going to have all this time to spend time with the family, but they're trying to do it, and you're showing grace and you're showing appreciation for your husband's ability to try to do it. And that's the biggest thing that you could do. And that might look like a whole handful of things. Hey, husband, I really appreciate everything that you do for me. Right? When my wife says that, it's like amazing. It's like the best thing that I could ever hear. You know, your sacrifice for this family is very appreciated. Hey, honey, I know you just got home from a long day. Here's a sandwich. Hey, honey, I know that you've been really struggling with this, and you're paying attention. That's all they want. They don't care if you get them anything. They just want to feel appreciated. And the last one is to make sure that you're following God and you're not following material things. Following God will always be against your actual nature, right? Your lustful nature to just want a bunch of stuff for no other reason than to show off to people. Oh, I want the Birkin bags, and I want the Rolexes, and I want the Porsches. I want whatever it is, the huge house, the pool. And you're foregoing everything that God sets out, right? God doesn't set out any of that. Oh, hey, your husband should give you everything that you want, and you guys are going to live rich, and you're not going to have to do much of anything. The Bible doesn't say that, right? God never says that. Jesus never says that. They only say deny yourself. So this is the sacrifice. Anytime the Bible talks about these women who were great, right? Because he says a righteous and virtuous woman is better than rubies, right? So better than diamonds. And so that puts all of the the pressure on the man to go out and do everything for his wife, but only expecting gratefulness and appreciation in return, right? When people follow material and not God, right, they are worried about what their friends say. Oh, girl, you should leave him, right? He's not going to get your hair done and your nails done every Monday and Tuesday. Don't worry about it. Oh, you guys are still living where? Don't worry about it. Go do something else, right? Because you are saying, hey, I'm foregoing what God has planned for my life. Whether that be children, whether that be your family and taking care of it. And I'm only going to focus on the material. Is my hair done? Is my nails done? Do I have a mansion or whatever? And you're saying, okay, God, I don't care about what you have for my life. I just want to have stuff. Right? Stuff, vanity, right? Stuff that you can't actually take. Stuff that is going to go away. Stuff that you're just going to want more of it. And a lot of times that's what it comes down to. Oh, I don't want to get with this person because of we're not going to be able to have the mansion that I want and the car that I want to drive. And so that's why early and often to be able to build focused on sacrifice, focus on appreciation, focus on being grateful, and then focus on God's mission and God's purpose for your life over the actual new material. Those are the things that women can take into account. Those are the things that men should be looking out for. And for so long, I never received this advice until later in my life. But if you're a young guy and you can look at these things and go, okay, I'm seeing now I need to get out of this thing, it's going to hurt, right? Because we are the true lovers. But It is going to hurt way worse when it's 20 years down the line, 10 years down the line, you have kids or whatever, and they're like, man, I never even really wanted this. And so, and especially if they tell you up front, hey, yeah, I just want to go do the career thing. And you're like, oh, well, I want a family. Unequally yoked. You can't do it. And I do want to preface this because sometimes I can see that it comes off a different way where people feel attacked. Guys, I promise you, I'm not trying to attack anybody. I believe that women are amazing and precious. I believe that men are just as amazing and should be the leaders of their household. But I do believe that God created man for woman and woman for man, right? We just complete each other. And so if you take the biblical principles and all the things that God wants for us, then you just live a better life altogether. Guys, thank you for tuning in to Family First, the Unbroken Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Newton. I'm out.